Hi, my name is Ben Leduc Mills. I'm a senior UX researcher with the Create stage, and we are going to talk a little bit about UX research today. This presentation is born out of kind of the cumulative questions that we've received over the past 6 months to a year, and just kind of also looking towards the future of having this resource available for folks who are a little bit curious about what we do and who we are and how to get involved. So we're going to keep this relatively high level, but we'll touch on a few things like what UX research is, who is on our team, what exactly we do when we're conducting research, and how product teams in particular can get involved in requesting UX research. And I will start with what and the why. So basically, UX research is the practice of understanding user behaviors, needs and motivations through observation, analysis, and feedback. And we do this in a variety of ways, which we'll get to later on in the presentation. But essentially, next slide, please. The purpose of UX research is to make our products better, and to do that in an informed way based on user insights and behavior. So we partner with product teams, and we determine what kind of research is needed to best answer questions and basically monitor and evaluate different parts of the product in order to improve our user experience. One good way to think about how UX research can be involved in the product development lifecycle is to just kind of break it down into a double diamond. So we often talk about problem validation research and solution validation research. And the way we do it here at GitLab is kind of very interesting, where designers, for the most part, do the solution validation. Of course, we're involved as researchers, but we primarily are involved in problem validation, and a whole variety of methodologies can be used in different parts of this double diamond. But basically, UX research in some form or another can be involved throughout the whole process. And with that, I will pass it to Will.
Thanks, Ben. So at this point, I'm going to cover the members of the user experience research team at GitLab, especially since we've grown a fair amount over the past like 6 to 8 months. So starting out, we have a total of 7 UX researchers on our team. That includes Ashley, Nick, Anna, Ben, Michael, Erica, and myself. So we handle the research for the various stage groups across GitLab. So you can see the different areas that we cover in parentheses below each of our names. Next, we have a UX research operations coordinator, Caitlin, who helps us locate, recruit, and compensate participants. And then finally, we have a UX research manager, Loren, and a UX research director, Adam, who cultivates and develops our research practice. So next, we're going to review the process for how we conduct research. So before we focus on the overall research process, we should highlight that researchers have multiple responsibilities. Those responsibilities include having a deep understanding of our users, working within the product teams that we support to help them lead research, getting buy-in for the research that we generate, and then prioritizing different research requests for the teams we support and updating documentation and processes like our GitLab handbook. So at a high level, the research process consists of 5 main steps, as you can see in this graphic. The first step is defining the goals of the research. So what do we want to learn? What do we want to know? And what will new research add to our existing set of knowledge? In step 2, this is recruiting the desired participants so that we can get user feedback on questions we and our product teams have about people and their engagement with our product. And step 3, that's collecting data from our participants, whether it's in the form of qualitative feedback, such as user pain points or attitudes about the product, or things like quantitative metrics like completion rate or time on task, or some mixture of qualitative and quantitative metrics. In step 4, it's analyzing data to identify insights that connect back to the original study goals and help answer questions about our users. And then in step 5, this is documenting research insights so that product teams know what they can do to continue to improve GitLab for our users. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ashley.
Yeah, so what are the kinds of research that are typically conducted and how do they fit into the life cycle? I'll be expanding a little bit about what Ben touched on with the double diamond. So this is just a little bit more of an overview of the double diamond design process and how research fits into this. So the process typically starts out with some catalyst that is captured in a problem statement, something that kind of describes who the problem impacts, the problem and the goal. And sometimes you don't have that. And instead, you really just need to start with a hypothesis or assumptions that you want to investigate further. But from there, you really have the discovery phase, which is the first part of the blue diamond. And that's really focused on understanding the user and their problems. And the goal is really just to learn as much as possible. And this is a divergent stage. This can also be called generative research, foundational, or problem validation research. And so some common methods that would fit into this area would be things like interviews or diary studies. And then at that point, you want to converge on your findings to identify different themes and patterns, and that would be captured in the define stage. And then here at this point, you can likely revise your initial problem statement or even hypotheses just because you have learned a lot about your users and the problems that they're facing. And this is really what informs the develop and test phase. And so in this phase, this is really focused on designing your MVP by developing multiple options and iterating. And this again is a very divergent stage. This can also be called tactical research, evaluative research, or even solution validation. And some common methods to assess this would include usability testing and tree testing. And then last, in the delivered listening phase, you decide on a solution. So you are converging and you hand it off to development. And at this point, you want to listen and get feedback from users. So listening could take the form of collecting survey feedback, like an assess survey, or even doing a more summative usability test. Next slide. And then thinking about research, you can also break it into quantitative and qualitative. Both are very important. They answer different kinds of questions and serve different purposes. They often complement each other, so you might have both in a study. But just very high level qualitative research is focused on understanding the why, deeply understanding maybe even a smaller subset of users, whereas quantitative research is aimed at understanding the what and useful when you want to establish benchmarks or understand broader usage. And you can see more examples here of methods that could be used. And next, I think we have Erica to go more into how product teams can use research.
Yes, so we wanted to end by letting you know how to work with us. Next slide. So yeah, this process is specific to the product teams that we support, but it's also helpful for you to know just how we work. So step 1 is to create a research issue, and that issue will help you think through the research project and the questions. And importantly, it also communicates the need to our team. Next. So the research template is important because it was designed to scaffold your process. So it will ask you different questions that you should be asking yourself as you think through your research process. So there's different types for different types of research projects, but it will ask you for things like what you want to know and when you need to know it by. So you'll see the prompts in the template, so I won't belabor those here, but know that they were intentionally created to help you think through the process like a user researcher would. Next one. And just wanted to make sure to point out that the detail that you can provide in the research request is very helpful to us in terms of clearly defining the research needs. And it helps us to work more efficiently with you to deliver results that are actionable. Asking yourself and your SAGE group the questions that we've outlined there is really helpful. And then after that, you're going to start working with your UXR from your SAGE group on the research process. Next slide. And in terms of the research process, just wanted to spell out the steps that you'll see us going through. On the right there, you can see that I'm experimenting with having different comment archetypes to make sure that teams are taking these different steps when possible in the issues, and that makes it helpful for context switching for researchers, but also just making it clear that we're going through these stages. So there's just a bias to jump into thinking about the types of methods, which we love the bias for action, but also in this case, it's actually helpful to just make sure you're spending time first refining your goals and your research questions. And from there comes the methodological considerations and how you'll approach the project. Then we'll think also about timeline and how we can do the MVR, minimum viable research, to deliver to you. Also important is kind of clarifying how you'll work as a team and what the different parts that team members will do. And then last, kind of what the deliverables will look like. Next slide. So sadly, we can't do it all for everyone. And what we can do, though, is kind of define clearly for you how we will work to support you on different projects. So basically, we have these 3 different levels of support that we offer. And then also a research calculator that gets filled out as part of our prioritization process. So the research calculator will ask questions like, or take into consideration things like the impact of the project, how much support is needed, whether a UXR needs to be involved to execute, if there's different types of methods involved in a specific project, and things like that. And then from that, we will then assign a support level. So you can see here that there's these 3 levels: gold, silver, and bronze. So starting on the bronze part, that's more of a light touch advisory, where we'll come in and provide some feedback, some suggestions ad hoc as available kind of during downtime between higher tier support. And those tasks that we might take up there would take around 3 to 5 hours. Then leveling up to silver, the DRI on that project, so not the UXR, will drive the timeline and the executables, but the UXR will come in to support on specific tasks or stages within the research project, but will generally be involved for less than a few days for each of those tasks. And the UXR may need to deprioritize that work if higher priority projects come into play. And if that happens, the DRI on the project will kind of pick up. But we'd like to be of service, so hopefully that doesn't happen. But in the end, we need to also be focusing on the gold level projects, which are kind of end to end from conceptualization to delivery. The UXR is working on all those components, kind of being the project manager in the project. And then also importantly, team members are there to provide support along the way, because research is a group effort. After we set up a research project and we're ready to go, then the next step, next slide, is to file a recruitment request, which is important because we need to kind of track all of our efforts along these different stages, especially with recruitment. And there's a link to the handbook page there where you can get involved. And with that, we'll say, please partner with us, and we are looking forward to researching with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to shout them out and I'll take notes, or someone will take notes. I did have a question off the top of my mind, but I wanted to wait to see if it was covered or not before I wrote it down. But basically, I'm just wondering for the consultation bronze step, at what point should a product designer reach out for assistance or consultation?
So we have this research prioritization process we're starting out and scaling for the teams. So hopefully we will have those projects on our radar. But really as early as setting up the research issue, we can kind of come in. But until we have that, it's hard to, it's more efficient if we have that in place to partner.
Right. Okay. So you had mentioned to start with the issue, but you also had mentioned to brainstorm on the questions that you want to ask and validate and whatnot. What if they need help with that step?
I think that the research issue will kind of work through that. And I think that, as we kind of mentioned, that's a stage 2 in the process. So getting the issue there, and then we can talk about it within the issue and work on developing those. And if needed, have a sync meeting if they need help. We're also here to coach and mentor. But that can all also happen async in the issue. And that can be helpful too.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Susan, looks like you have a question.
Oh, it wasn't a question. Actually, I meant it to be read only.
Oh.
But so the Bentley's graduate student team that's doing usability testing on the doc site, this is the sort of information, real world information that they really enjoy seeing. So I'm going to share it with them.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts? Michael, I think Oliver, I think I saw that. You had a point to make.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting necessarily to voice. I just wanted to say on your last thing, Justin, don't be afraid to create an issue. Anybody, don't be afraid to create a research issue if you don't have all of the details. Yeah, as Erica was saying, we can help with that. So if you add us, even if it's like a mostly blank issue, we can help fill everything out as needed and then determine exactly what more we should do later. So we can help with any part of the process.
Awesome. Thank you. With that, I will stop recording.